Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world tuning in. Thanks so much for spending some time with us today. My name is Josh Epstein. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Aris, and it's been a real thrill since I've been with the company about 2 years now, just to be moderating this virtual panel discussion that we call Pulling the Digital Thread, where we explore different topics that are shaping engineering, shaping product lifecycle management, shaping the broader digital enterprise, all from the perspective of this idea of a product, a digital thread. So our goal is to bring together some of the brightest minds in the space and sort of trade ideas and explore new angles. So we are streaming on a delay here, so we won't be taking live questions, but we do like to host a discussion online on LinkedIn. So if you want to post any questions, if you use the hashtag Pulling the Digital Thread, we and our panelists will follow, and hopefully we can engage in some discussion online afterwards. So let's dig in. So today we're exploring this really interesting concept of value stream management, or value stream analytics, or value stream analysis. I'm joined today, before we get into our panelists, I'm joined by a co-moderator here, my colleague Pavel Chizinski, our Senior Director of Strategic Research here at Aris. And Pavel and I, he's been my one of my mentors in the PLM space here over the past couple of years. And so we started down this. He came in and we had this conversation about this idea of value stream management, which honestly I think I maybe back in my MBA days I had heard the term or something like the term. And he was talking about the intersection with PLM. And I think to start out, Pavel, maybe just sort of talk about like where this idea came from, what your perspective is, kind of give us the context here of the discussion before we jump in with the panelists.
Sure. Welcome, everybody. So it was really a very simple thought. I was looking at workflow management in PLM, and it occurred to me that you put together a workflow, which is sort of a process modeling. It's not a perfect process modeling, but it is. And then people execute these workflows, and then they just leave them behind because they move on to the next thing. And yet those workflows generate a lot of metadata, kind of digital exhaust, as Patrick introduced me to this term. And this data stays on the platform, but nobody really looks back at it to compare execution of this flow against that flow in different geographical locations by different teams to gain some additional insight. At the same time, so that was what triggered the thought. At the same time, much is being said about shifting, thinking about PLM from engineering IT managed tool into more of a strategic initiative within the company that is that cuts across everything. And in order to do that, you definitely need to line up somehow PLM with business objectives of the company, with the high level business objectives. And that's how I stepped into VSM. by reading up about this and kind of, what is this VSM?
Yeah.
And I started talking with several individuals here on this panel, and we thought that it would be really interesting to explore how does VSM, which is completely separate from PLM right now, except in Marcelo's case, maybe, there's been some activity trying to connect the two. So what is the connection between VSM and PLM, and can that way of thinking elevate PLM to a much more strategic role within the company? That's basically the premise.
Let's dig in and figure that out. So let's do a quick round of introductions. So if I could ask each of our panelists just to introduce themselves, the organizations that they're involved with, their background, their research, their interests in this area. Patrick, why don't we start with you?
Oh, great. Terrific. Thank you guys very much. I enjoy doing this sort of thing. So my name is Pat Hilberg, and my professional background in PLM was Dassault and Siemens, and I was an architect for them. So architecting systems, managing the teams that would bring systems to life. I then in 2019 I retired into teaching. I now teach a graduate management course at Oakland University, and this is Oakland County near Detroit, not the one near San Francisco. So I teach a course called Product Lifecycle Management. That said, that is much more of a business strategy course. It's the course fulfills a requirement in the engineering management program, and I really I call that managing product life cycles, by which I mean the full extent of the product life cycle, all the way to, from the original idea on a barroom napkin until the product comes out of life or out of service at the end of its life.
Great. Marcellus, introduce yourself.
So, thank you. So, just thank you for this introduction at the beginning. So, my name is Marcellus Menges. I'm Vice President Global R&D at the SIG AG. So, we are very famous for sensors and intelligent sensors and connected systems. From background, I'm an industrial engineer in the field of PLM since more than 20 years now. So started at the university with playing around for big customers to show how PLM systems can be used for. I also did there a lot of trainings and lectures, and now still more than 10 years, I'm always responsible for the processes, methods, and the systems and engineering, which is always connected heavily to PLM and to the whole architecture. And I hope today I also can introduce the view of the management. What is PLM in a company and where can you use it depending on the scope you are defining?
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, and thanks for having me on here. My history since the very, very early 90s, I've been involved in IT, and in particular for nearly all of that time, digital transformation programs, whether they be ITIL, TOGAF, SAFE, Scrum, the whole list. I've probably been through the whole gamut. And over that time, I've worked with various companies such as Ball and Software, Accenture, Cognizant, and GitLab. And I've been involved in various types of migrations. And for the last 20 years, I've been involved in DevOps or DevSecOps, as some people will call it. And as an extension of that, I've been looking at value stream management for a decade now. In particular, as a result of a value stream mapping technique, which is used in DevOps. And I've been an ambassador with the Value Stream Management Consortium, which was formed way back in 2019. So I've been working as part of that group ever since then, doing various research and thought leadership and so on, and working with esteemed people such as Craig Statham, who joins us on the panel here today.
Craig, I guess that's over to you.
Thanks, Stephen. Morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm Craig Statham. So I'm Chief Software Architect for a company called SAS, who's a large analytic vendor. You might have heard of SAS, where we provide a lot of software around analytics and AI and help our customers to really make sense of some of that digital exhaust that you talked about earlier. Why I'm really excited about this conversation, though, really is my background goes back 35 years in IT, but I spent the first 10 years of that in manufacturing. I actually trained as an electrical electronic engineer originally, ended up developing CNC and PLC software for large machining centers, but worked in that manufacturing space. So I'm really interested to be a part of this conversation today when we talk about how we're kind of bringing those two things together, bringing what is essentially the manufacturing space into more of the software development space and value stream management. So as Stephen says, in more recent years, I've been involved in the Value Stream Management Consortium, and with Stephen, we've done some research around value stream reference architecture, which has been really exciting. And so really looking forward to this conversation today. So.
Yeah, let's dig in. I mean, I in familiarizing myself and with the topic and talking with Pavel, I actually studied industrial engineering as well, and sort of think back to lean manufacturing and kind of all of the work that redefined manufacturing processes just in time and similar concepts. And then fast forward, 20 years or so, and the rise of Agile and DevOps, and just rethinking how software was developed. It's interesting. It sort of feels like that even though maybe the concepts sort of were born in discrete manufacturing technologies, from a manufacturing sense, adapted to design principles from a software sense. I think we're just really starting to see this evolution, or this move of product design following similar principles. So I think this is a very, very cool concept that I hope folks will listen carefully. We have a lot of smart people here. This is going to be definitely a rodeo of a conversation, I think. But let's get started, and please, I'm hoping we can have an open conversation. So, Stephen, let's maybe start with you. Just maybe for those in the audience that aren't familiar with VSM, can you just describe it and sort of talk about the basics for someone who's just hearing the term right now?
Yeah. Okay, so let's start off with a simple definition. Value stream management is about the ability to take something, a product, a service, or whatever, from idea through to realization so that it delivers a business outcome. It delivers customer value to the extent that the customer is willing to pay for that item that it receives. Now, I stress there that could be a product or it could be a service, and a service could be made up of multiple products. But the idea is that it will achieve that business outcome and do it in an extremely efficient way. So you mentioned about some of the techniques where value stream management comes from. Many could say, for example, the printing press. The printing press is an early example of value stream management, where something was leaned in its technique, in how it produced something that was of value to the customer, made it simple, made it easier, and the customer was willing to pay for it. But in more modern times, you're looking at very early implementations were with Henry Ford, with the machine plant line, and then later with the Toyota production system, where many more of the lean and agile techniques came in, Kaizen and so on. And then that's later been modified and adjusted. But the interesting thing is that within the IT industry, it's only really been since about 2018 that people have looked at value stream management as a discipline being applied within the delivery of IT products and IT services. So that's pretty much the background of value stream management, where it comes from, and in a nutshell what it is. But as I say, that's a simplistic version. There's far more to it than that when you deep dive into it.
Well, so maybe, Patrick, you want to, from your perspective,
and let me say,
PLM. How does this fit with PLM?
Sure. And let me say, my background is manufacturing as well. I moved into PLM from robotics, and I teach out of the industrial and systems engineering department. I was running a PLM project 11, 12 years ago, and picked up the book Essential Scrum, and it has a really terrific rendition or description of building an inventory of requirements. I'm kind of anti-V model. So the traditional predictive approach is we build an inventory of requirements at the beginning of the project, and then we slowly check off each of those requirements. Well, in lean theory, inventory is bad. And particularly when you're implementing new technology at a client where frankly you're changing processes and that sort of thing. People just don't know at the beginning how to lay out everything that's going to happen. So without trying to get into differences between DevOps and Scrum or Agile, just the ability to change our minds as we learn new things is an important part to the projects that I ran, and it's also an important part to the teaching that I do.
So, Patrick, if you really simplify PLM, you can say that the basic value of PLM is taking what engineers have done and making it manufacturable. Right? That's like really making it very simple. So how does that relate to business values of VSM?
Yeah. So let me I'm gonna my PLM definition is much broader than that.
Yeah.
So if you know, we have some perception that we have some customer perception of value, and from that we generate requirements, and then the requirements are also driven by regulations, and then we get into designs, and then we get into manufacturing and such like. So so there's kind of two answers to this. The book I initially started teaching from really highlights the idea of virtualization, and I use an aphorism: it's cheaper to bend bits and bytes than it is to bend metal. So the more we can virtualize, and then I think we've talked about shift left. The more we can virtualize, the more we can shift left, the more we can replace physical construction with information. I mean, the more we can do in bits and bytes rather than in the physical world, the easier it is, and the less expensive. But I don't even want to get entirely focused on just expense. It's we can learn new things in this virtual world. So we can shift left. We can think virtually. I definitely see an overlap between PLM and Lean. And in another book that I teach from, the title of the book is Product Lifecycle Management: The Next Generation of Lean Thinking. So we can do a lot with both gaining information and also collective learning, where we're collectively learning from each other. So if you think of we'll go back to the printing press, which was Stephen's comment. As they were developing the printing press, they had to physically build the printing press in order to test it out. Well, the more and more testing we can do in the virtual space, I'll just say lean, right? I want to drop on the word lean. The more we do in the virtual space, the more we can learn, and the less expensive is the learning process.
So, great. Okay, but bringing it closer to PLM again, Marcellus, I know that you've done a lot of work. You've attempted to do a lot of work of combining VSM with PLM somehow.
Yes.
How do you do that? How do you bring these separate people that never talk to each other, to the same table to discover synergy?
So exactly, this is what my definition of PLM is. So starting with this, for me, product lifecycle management means you have to manage your product along the life cycle, and very important, I'm working for a company, you have to earn money with it. And this is a very important thing, what I think people have to think about working in PLM. Where do we as a company earn money with? So, and in our case, it is in having a new innovation in the market. So we are working in a market which is very fast, which is changing very fast, and we have to be very fast bringing new innovations to the market. And we are only successful if this innovation itself is really in the market, can be used, have a value for the customer. We are earning money. So, and this is always the starting point, which I started also years ago, because I was thinking about, okay, you want to implement new stuff, new system in your company, and you have to ask for money. And as an industrial engineer, the question was, okay, what is it good for? What do you tell your money is good for? And then it was like, okay, we can maybe improve our processes to speed up from design to production so that we can manufacture it. Or at the moment, we are dealing a lot with software updates. So we have to think about how can we deploy new software or save updates very fast to our customers to support them. And this is when I said, okay, look, we should not do what classic PLM or PDM projects did, implementing in systems which can have the data in, you can find very fast on documents. No, we should really manage. I have an idea. I have to build up for sure documentation, and I can sell it. And I started not at the beginning with requirements management. I started at the end. Okay, go to sales, ask what data do you need to sell our product? What are the important data, and started the journey backwards. And then you're automatically in the value stream, yeah, because you're not thinking and okay, I need a graph to be to show better how my product informations are interlinked. No, then you really have a process and you start searching for technology supporting this. Then at some point you come, okay, I need maybe a graph DB because it's faster than SQL, but it's not something I will discuss. I will use it. Yeah. And so I start really to manage my value stream at the beginning. And for me, very important, I always differentiate between product data management, which are the most PLM projects, and really product lifecycle management. And that's this lifecycle management. For me, it is inclusive that we have processes, digital process. We manage them and try to speed it up. And we can measure it. Also, if we just have product data, because we know when is it released by whom? When was it started by whom? So, and there we also see, okay, this project or this innovation took so much time. Yeah. And now you have to think about what can I support? What can I implement to speed it up? Yeah, I want to be faster. And then you have, what can you do? You can cut workflows or you can implement virtual environments to do a shift left principle to virtualize in the very early phase concept wise and really think about, okay, what can I use to speed up? And this is for me absolute value driven. Yeah. And this does also means in some cases that we cut topics which were the basic topic for implementing a PLM system. Yeah? So there were a lot of effort last decades to say, okay, what is a numbering system? What is the naming of this numbering? Stuff like that, where I say, okay, this is a waste of time. We need a number and we have to speed up the process. People who think like this, they don't care anything about the name of a product. Important is it has a number, it is unique, you can store it, and you can process it through the complete life cycle. Yeah? And thinking about this, what speed up also helps you to do not unnecessary things in this project here now where I see in also the nowadays discussion in LinkedIn about PLM, it's the same discussion since 30, 40 years. Yeah. And I say, okay, why are you doing it, guys? We are in the century of artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence with agentic AI helps me to automate processes or even not having processes. Yeah. Showing an agent, what can you do? And also for me, this is the next level of process management for the value stream, because nowadays I will build up a workflow if I want the agent really to follow this workflow, because this is out of a legal requirement and you have to do it like this. Otherwise, do whatever you have as a model with the data and be as fast as possible. Yeah, and this is how you should think PLM. Yeah, for me, PLM very often is discussed as deeply IT things. And yes, you need it, and it is there to speed up, but you should always measure your success in the process on your value stream.
Marcellus, I have 10 follow-up questions, but before we do that, I want to double click on one of the first points you made, and actually I want to shift that over to Craig. Let's double click on this idea of value, kind of like how do you, because I think that's key. And you said in the beginning, Marcellus, like we're not in the business to make products, we're in the business to make money, create value. So Craig, can you talk about the V in value stream management, and what does it mean to be business value driven?
Yeah, I mean, this really cuts to the core of what it is to do VSM, value stream management, is starting with that point of understanding what is business value. And that's very contextual, right? What is business value? We could probably do a whole session on what is business value, right? Because it really depends on, are you a publicly traded company? Are you a private company? Are you a startup? Are you a government agency, right? What value means to you is going to be very, very contextual. So it's really about starting with outcomes. We've already mentioned this, like working backwards idea, right? And working towards shifting left. But starting with outcomes and figuring out what are those outcomes that we actually want to achieve that is going to be business value to us. And so then it's really about, are we delivering the right things at the right time, in the right place to the right people, right? And really understanding that as an outcome. When we do that, and when we do that in value stream management, what we're really doing is finding that alignment. It's finding that alignment of flow that allows us to bring that work through the value stream achieve those outcomes and to reach those outcomes. So I think that's what's really important. But starting with the business value and trying to understand that first of all, I think is key, absolutely key.
Yes, and
Go ahead.
yeah, and for me, you nailed a very important point. You have to think what brings value, and if you concentrate on this, you automatically discuss with interdisciplinary teams, with people, because everybody has a different value out of it.
Yeah.
And mostly what we are doing is we say, okay, we start with PLM and we want to improve the first processes, like how do I design something and bring it into the platform. Yeah. And what you see is that you're discussing with people designing something, and you try to minimize their workload. Yeah? But way around, if you maximize their workload and make more value out of, you will see they will work more, but you will speed up heavily in the value. Yeah, it is. This is also where I differentiate always, because you have two targets. One is time to market, where you have to speed up, where you see, cases are completely different targets than combining. I want to be high efficient in engineering. Yeah, because if you're maybe not so efficient in engineering, you're much faster.
Yeah.
And really, it's always about what is the effort you have to do and what is the value out of, and really start thinking in this.
Yeah.
And especially in PLM, where you, as Pavel mentioned at the beginning, you have also digital models of your processes. Yeah, you can measure it, you can do analytics, and you can improve it. And I think this is really something we should way more focus on future in PLM, in the processes. What are KPIs? What are OKRs to achieve? What is important also for different companies? What are the value streams? What are the offerings? And discuss this, and not in new interfaces, engineering change, model-based systems engineering, because this will come along, because these are mechanism possibilities you use them to speed up. Yeah, but discussing this without having a target,
I think
brings no value.
That discussing as well is really important, in that you've got to have that ubiquitous language, right? When you're talking about value, you've all got to appreciate that in a way where you're using the same terms and in those discussions, so it's not confusing. And for example, a customer journey, you might think a customer journey is a value stream. Well, actually, it's not. It's not a value stream at all.
No.
Right? A value stream is about how we deliver value. It's not how a customer progresses through some experience that we're trying to give them. You might use value streams to enhance that customer journey, but the two things are not the same. So having that ubiquitous language around understanding what value is really important.
There's two measurement types which are talked about within value stream management. There's flow efficiency, and then there's effectiveness. And you consider them at 90-degree angles to each other. You think in mathematical terms, they're at 90-degree angles to each other. So your flow efficiency is how well you're delivering. And that's in terms of quality as well as time. But then there's also flow effectiveness. And the reason I think it's important to differentiate the two is that you can be as effective as possible at delivering something. You can be the fastest as possible. You can be the most efficient as possible. You can hit the best quality targets possible. But if what you've delivered is not what the customer wants, you have not been effective. You've just been very efficient at delivering something the customer does not want. Likewise, you can deliver 100% exactly what the customer wants. But if you've not been fast enough, if you've not been efficient enough, you are not going to make the customer happy. So this is why it's sometimes very important to differentiate between the two. So within IT, we talk about DORA metrics, which are things like, your mean time to market, the MTTR ratio and your change frequency rate and so on. But you're not then talking about in terms of, the monetary value, the revenue, in terms of net promoter score. And then just one final differentiator to consider in those is what's leading and what's lagging. If you consider lagging metrics, you're only looking at how you've performed in the past. Now, that's great to measure and see how you've done in the past, but that doesn't tell you how you're going to perform in the future. So the importance is to understand what are potentially leading metrics, the metrics that are going to tell you how you are going to be performing in the future, those are important ones to consider as well.
So, can anyone, just one of you, give us a good example, practical example, what happened when the right VSM process was applied to the overall processes in a company? Like practically, what happened? Company name, product name, success.
I can give you our experience if you'd like. So I work in the customer intelligence division at SAS, and I've been working in that group for actually nearly over 25 years. And I'd seen a lot of change over the time in terms of what we've been trying to do. And we were delivering software originally as a product. And so very much like the mechanical process, right? We bundle up and package a product that eventually we deliver to the customer, and that might go on DVDs or CDs, or they might even download it perhaps. But the customer takes that product when they want it and start deploying and installing that product. But we knew we needed to shift to the cloud. So we knew we needed to shift to software as a service. And so we started looking at what that means in terms of doing DevOps, in terms of how we get software to the cloud quickly and how we deliver value to customers quickly. But what we were finding is that although our best efforts at doing that were monumental, that we still weren't getting value to customers as quickly as we'd like. And what that really was all about was how we were organized. And the fact that we weren't actually organized around our value streams. We knew what value was in our product, and we knew what our customers valued about the product, but we weren't arranged and organized around that value to deliver that value. And so that's something that we really dug into, looking at how to apply value stream management and value streams into our organization. We looked at using a thing called team topologies by Matthew Skelton, Manuel Paz. Wrote that book back in 2019. And then Stephen and I got together and were chatting about what value stream management kind of really was, because even then it was still sort of a bit woolly in terms of how we actually apply that. And that's what got Stephen and I were researching into value stream reference architecture, understanding Conway's law, which is the whole idea of the communication paths in your teams, reflected by the communication paths in the architecture, the software architecture. So those two things kind of have to come together. And then seeing the light in terms of then how we align our value streams to get that alignment for fast flow was really crucial. And once we did that, the change was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Some of our executives were reporting things like in their whole tenure at SAS, they hadn't seen this level of innovation coming out of a single organization within the company. So it made a tremendous difference just in terms of how we thought about value and how we delivered value and how that value was now aligned into those value streams.
Let's maybe shift a little back into the PLM world. And Patrick, maybe back to Pavel's original interest here. Give us the corollary with workflows and kind of understanding, how workflows come together to sort of deliver value. I know I'm actually the other. Maybe I'm also my comment. I know that you teach, lots of examples of where this has gone wrong, right? Where teams have failed to come together and deliver value to the extreme, where it's really delivering kind of anti-value and harm to people, to safety, to the world.
Yeah. Yes. So I'll start with the second one first. We spend a lot of time in my course looking at product failures, and in the PLM world, these are things that move, right? These are things that have inertia. So I spent a lot of time on the GM ignition switch recall, which happened in 2014, and then also on the Boeing 737 MAX crashes, which were in 2018 and 2019. Those were relatively small pieces of software, which led to between the two of them, nearly 500 deaths. And also between the two of them, close to $30 billion in losses. So anyway, so we spent a lot of time on that. To be honest, I spend a lot of time on culture and how do cultures adapt to change. And in order to innovate, we have to change. To digitally transform, we have to change, but cultures resist change. Why is it that cultures resist change? So, I spend a lot of time on that. To tell you the truth, what's kind of interesting to me in this conversation, I apologize, Josh, I'm going to be professor for a second. We
Yes,
talk about we need to bring business value. Of course. Why is that hard? Why is it difficult to bring value? Why is it difficult for the large organization to truly bring value to customers?
I've got a quick answer for you on that one, if I may. This is just from my experience with so many large organizations I've dealt with, because I work with consultancies inside companies, the consultancies themselves. And it's very hard for an organization to not think introspectively rather than extrospectively, if there's such a word. It's the fact that when we consider value, when we think about what we're delivering, we think about our own world. We take on board our own experiences. Whereas what we need to do is we need to be more empathetic towards the customer, and it's what the customer wants and what they actually need. And when you look at the successful businesses versus the not successful businesses, that is the key differentiator you see. So I'm going to put out there Blockbuster versus Netflix. Blockbuster did not understand the customer requirement, the flexibility, the fact that they didn't want to go to the store. They didn't have to go to the store. Netflix quickly jumped on that. I'm not even going to send you the DVDs through the mail anymore. I'm going to provide it all online for you because it makes your life easier. That's just one classic example, really, of that difference between customers. Another one.
One of my students, I end the semester with either project or debate. One of my student teams looked at exactly that. And Blockbuster was making something like 25% of its revenue on late fees and rewind fees, which were things that customers hated. We're making our money on things that customers hate, right? How long is this going to last? So, and then there's a new technology that comes out, which is, the initial Netflix was DVDs, right? And first, there is no rewind, right? Rewind has nothing to do with a DVD. And second, they just created a brand new business model, which was, you just subscribe and there's a monthly fee. There's not a weekend rental. There's a monthly fee, and you can keep the DVD as long as you want. And then when you send it back, we'll send you a new one. So it's interesting you bring that one up.
Yeah. It's and that's what it is. It's about that customer focus. It's about understanding who your customer is and what it is that they actually want. And the difficulty in that is that quite often that is not objective, it's subjective. It's how you make the customer feel. And that is very difficult to measure. That is something that is very difficult for anybody to actually put down, in a bank book and to show to shareholders to say, look what we've achieved. Because at the end of the day, that doesn't turn in the dimes and the dollars.
Absolutely.
But the first very hard step is to know who really your customer is. Because in most cases, people tell you it's this or it's this company. But who at the company? The purchasing department? Is it a technical guy? Who is it? Who do I have to convince? What is really the value? Who is having this value? Yeah, and this is the first difficulty I always see, to whom you are talking. And then the next difficulty, especially at very big companies, is to make very transparent to nearly each department or to each employee what is the value you provide to this customer. Yeah, and this is why I believe startups are so successful, because they have, at the end, 90% of the people have a direct contact to the customer, because they're smart, they have to deliver. And at big companies, how many people have customer contact? 2%, 3%?
I would actually go further.
Yep.
I would actually go further in this day and age. We're now in the day and age, not just of AI, but the Internet of Things, which means you don't have to just understand what it is that your customer wants. It's what the customer of your customer wants, and the partners, everybody that's involved in them. We no longer live in a transactional business environment. We live in a partnership environment.
Yeah.
We live in an environment where we have to work with everybody else around us because they are working with other people around them. And nothing is ever an island. There is always a ripple effect, some impact that's going to come from somewhere else within the business or some other industry. There's going to be some sort of disruptor that comes along. Classic example, ChatGPT comes along. and the whole world loses its head and goes AI mad, and everything else gets dropped, and we're all going in for AI. That's fine. That's fantastic. That's how revolutions within industries are formed. But it's these kinds of things, these kinds of disruptors that can suddenly change things at a moment, which is probably then another success factor of businesses, reflected again in the blockbuster Netflix example. It goes back to Darwin. Darwin's the greatest misquote ever. It's not the strongest of the species that survives. It's the one that's most adaptable to change. And I think that's true for businesses as well. It's the one that's most adaptable to change.
Yeah, to bring it back a little bit to PLM specifics, perhaps it's a commentary. Perhaps what all of you are saying is that if you're asking how PLM helps engineering processes, that type of question will not help to make PLM a strategic initiative in the company.
Well,
right? That's basically.
I mean, I think, sorry, I don't want to hog too much conversation, but I think this is where VSM needs to learn something from PLM, because, value stream management, its history. So we started years ago centering around projects. We built things around projects. We then shifted from project to product. So teams were based around products, and we built products, and they existed for that life cycle. Value stream management is something different. Value stream management is based around these things called value streams. And value streams don't just represent a product, they represent a business service. And a business service can be made up of multiple products, or it could be even a product that is replaced or changed over time. New technologies come along, new capabilities. And what we still don't do very well in value stream management today is understand exactly when our product is reaching the end of its life cycle and needs to be replaced with something new. There is going to be a point where the shelf life starts to go off on your product, and you need to understand, right, I need to develop a new product to replace that now, or 6 months ago, or 6 weeks ago, in which case, panic mode. It's that understanding of what's that point at which your product is going to die off, and you need a new product to come in, so that your value stream maintains its life cycle, it maintains its ability to deliver value to the end customer.
Maybe let's shift it. Let's go with that direction and think about how this approach, whether you call it value stream analytics or something else, how can it inform decisions, right? And so Marcellus, let's maybe start with you. How can this type of thinking actually, affect how you make decisions or changes to the organization or product related?
So I think this is very important. Also, the value stream is very important for PLM, because what I'm doing. So in most of the cases in the company, you deliver a value to your customer via a product. A product can be everything. It can be a really physical product. But it could also be a service driven via software. Yeah. And now really important is to understand what is it to describe this product, what is the value. And now PLM for me is very important. Why? Because in a PLM, I see what is my portfolio, what is my value I am delivering to a customer, and I can really plan the future. So what projects are needed, what products are needed really to stay on this value level or to improve it. And then with a PLM system, it's like a DevOps server. Yeah, take the PLM as the development side, where describe your future portfolio and the value, and then SCM is running it. But when you are very successful, you have to think in the PLM, what is the next step? What do I have to implement as a product? And also for me at the department, then it's very important, okay, what capabilities do I need? Can I use AI for? Can I use GraphDB? What is the need to make the next step? Yeah, to improve the value. And this is how you can also see PLM as a DevOps or DevBiz loop, ops loop, yeah. And say, okay, I'm describing, testing very early and pushing value. And you should always, next to your product, really have all the information in your PLMs. And really, what is the value? What are the counts I sell my products? Yeah, is it declining? Is it decreasing? And also then you automatically start also a very classic thing, a product engineering process and the ECM is not different. The only difference is the scope of what I have to deliver. Yeah. And then you also can get rid of this discussion and say, okay, it's one process. I'm delivering a value. And then you also can start building up a very lean process side to it because you're really and always focused on the value. And also what is a value stream plus PLM very good for is you can prioritize. Yeah, if you have a lack on resources, you can think about, okay, what is my product with the highest value? This has priority 1, the second one 2, and then automatically you also get a prioritization and not you have to discuss on whatever model you're using. There are a lot of models how you can prioritize with what is the risk, what is the value, whatever. No, focus on the value because at the end, this is the 2 KPIs, revenue and earnings. This is the 2 KPIs every company on earth have, and this is their main KPIs. And you have to take care also in the engineering about it. You don't have to make the best design or the high quality. You have to make the design the customers will pay you for. Yeah, and you have to get a value out. And if you can transform this also to the engineering and to show, okay, don't look behind, look in the future. I think then you can be very successful. And there is only one discipline which can support this. This is PLM, because SCM is looking at what is today. How can I support this? What is written? This is okay. This is their job. But our job is to deliver innovations in the future and not to maintain today's product portfolio, or in most companies to have the regulatories somewhere baked in to be compliant. Yes, this is for me always the bottom target. But the highest target is bring value with the products to the customer, to your future customer. And this is what you have to think about. And then I'm right also with what Stephen and Craig is saying. The biggest problem is how to change people's mindset, because they were trained and learned over years to act as they do, and they want to be better and better. But how can you explain to them, so it's not needed anymore? You have to learn, you have to change, you have to adapt. For them, this is a high risk.
Patrick, how does this relate to your work with culture? And I'm curious how you.
So if you change processes, for instance, I take a simple example. You need CAD system A. Yeah, now you decide out of what technical reason you go to CAD system B. Yeah, so you go to this department and say, look, we have to change the CAD system out of this reason. These people don't want to do this, yeah, because they were trained for 20 years in these old CAD systems. Now changing means they don't have any experience. Yes, they are as good as any else designer in the company. And to convince them, now we have to do it to bring a better value. You have to learn. So also to explain them, the value you can bring at the moment is to learn the system, not to deliver design. And this you have to make people transparent and explaining them. And I believe in most cases you could get a value, but there is an obstacle in the head of a person who's not capable to do it.
Sorry, Marcellus.
Yeah, and now it's more and more complex if you have interdisciplinary team, because you have to change this communication. And I see it very often. You are asking people, what is it, how we should work in future? And they exactly show you it is how we work today, not as it is in the system, as it is today, but it's not different to what you need in future. And this is very hard. And I think the highest success is supporting people with technology and makes them to use.
This is something that we discovered through looking at the research we did in the value stream reference architecture, is that alignment between organization and system architecture and Conway's law. Yeah. But what you have in the real world is that our organizations are still based around 18th century militaristic styles of organizational architecture. You can talk about agile as much as you want and, autonomy within teams. There is still an organizational structure, a hierarchy to which people have to take part. And there's still a certain amount of set format and fragility within that organization, because we set people within that team and they work within that team. However, in the real world in IT, change is happening all the time. And some of that change happens to your application architecture. So over time, your organization stays the same and your application architecture starts to drift away. And they become more and more divergent until after a period of time, you reach a period where the organizational architecture cannot support that system architecture anymore. It is too much cognitive load. There's too much strain. What happens? Well, something has to break or change. And that change is either a complete re-architecture, which is a massive, very expensive exercise that can lead to a lot of technical debt and a lot of issues and a prevention of new value add being put into your products. Or you go through a massive reorganization. And we all know what a massive reorganization means. You lose a lot of your best minds. People don't like the way things are going. People's jobs suddenly change overnight in massive ways that they can't cope with. And you end up with a loss of team morale. So both of those are bad. But with the value stream reference architecture, what we're saying is that as you make that incremental change within your application, you should be making that change within your organization. That is the cultural paradigm shift, is to say we make small incremental changes to what we actually do, what our responsibilities are, and we do that to match the changes that are being made to our systems in order to meet the changes from our customers and what their business needs are.
So something I teach is, and I'm going to go back a little bit on Marcellus's 2 KPIs of earnings and revenue. I think that the system organizationally and culturally is more complex than we're currently discussing. So I begin my semester with a simulation called the beer game. And it's a 4-tier supply chain, and each person has a very simple, each person in each tier has a very simple goal. It's maximize earnings, and you will be charged 50 cents a case if you have too much inventory, and you'll be charged $1 a case if you have too little inventory. And they all start out with a little bit too much inventory. And all my engineers are good industrial systems people, right? And they're all trying to lower their inventory because inventory is bad. But then customer demand doubles. And what happens at that point? And it changes from, I mean, I've run it now with maybe a dozen or so teams, and how it always screws up. It is just a freaking disaster. And I got to tell you something, as a professor, I watch this thing and say, oh, I just love this, because they learn through frustration. So some of my worst teams, after 36 weeks of production, they'll end up with hundreds of years of inventory. So so there's cultural issues. I'm driven by some sort of a goal issue. There's latency issues. Primarily what I get into is decomposition issues, where we decompose work into these different groups. So we have these systems that are built on, you do your job, you do your job, you do, and there's a value stream that goes through there. But we fail to recognize that there are cultural dynamics based on latency, based on uncertainty, based on organizational metrics that say you must perform to this certain level or you will be fired. So the first time I ran this simulation was in 2021, and I teach in Detroit, and all my students are in the auto industry. And so it was February of 2021, and we ran the thing, and I'm sure they all look at me as crazy Professor Hilberg doing his thing on the beer game. And 3 weeks later, all of their factories shut down because they didn't have integrated circuits. So it made absolute rational sense in the midst of COVID to cut your purchasing, particularly in integrated circuits. And then when suddenly the market doubled from where the market just dropped 90% and came back to roughly where it was, and suddenly you no longer had parts in your system. So one of the key aphorisms that underlies my class is that decomposition creates dysfunction. That dysfunction is not technical. That dysfunction is cultural, it's organizational. And how do you deal with that? And then I'll flip a little bit. So if your customer changes their mind, so using Conway's law, and I see it in the book that I teach from, is Peter Senge's The Fifth Discipline. In Conway's law, your organization will build its substructure beneath your product development. So you have a product, you design your organization around the product. When customer perception of value on that product changes, do you change your organization? Can you innovate out of your existing organization that was designed towards whatever your initial product was? And Clay Christensen talks about this in his book, The Innovator's Dilemma, that and Marcellus kind of brought it up with startups, when the company forms, they organize themselves around whatever problems they're having to fight off, right? I got a problem from here, I got to fight it off, problem here. And eventually you develop these organizational norms towards fighting the original fires, but you're much less capable at fighting the future fires. And Blockbuster, for example, is an example of that. But so is IBM, so is Xerox, all sorts of companies that just were, Sears, all sorts of companies that were just everybody's everything and fell apart. And to a large extent, they became too rigid in terms of what their perception of their value stream was. I'll stop.
No, we're getting to the end. The time is running out. I just wanted to ask Craig one question of you specifically, because you explain how deeply involved you are in the VSM implementation. What are the data visualizations or dashboards that C-level management likes to see to judge the investment value into VSM, so that, let's say, PLM can produce that data into those visualizations? What is the form of monitoring that VSM makes sense?
Yeah, again, this is all about context, right? And what business value means, going back to that discussion earlier. Your C-suite undoubtedly are going to be more interested in the bottom line, right, than anything else, right? They're going to want to know, they're going to want to be able to translate what we're doing in terms of value stream management towards how that's making a difference to the organization for its bottom line, right? Where is the growth coming from, right? What is driving that growth? Where's the profitability in what you're doing, and how is value stream management kind of helping that? And there are various metrics and KPIs and dashboards and things like the DORA metrics that we often use in a DevOps world nowadays, which helps us to sort of look at productivity and how we're doing things, perhaps, and also whether the amount of deployments we're doing is helping us to increase our value. It's like everything else. When we do things in small incremental steps and get that fast feedback, it's the fast feedback that's important, right? That helps us to be more dynamic in terms of agile and being able to change and really chase that value. Then those kind of metrics are kind of useful. But I also think about some of the things that make teams be efficient, and how those teams are delivering value is important to consider. Things like how much work in progress they have, right? Well, too much work in progress is a killer of productivity, right? So keeping your WIP limits under control, looking for things that are sort of maybe made in hidden work, right? Is the work going on that we're really not focused on, we're not seeing, right? That's consuming all of our time and slowing us down and not making us be driven towards that value. Is the neglected work, right? Is the work out there that we're simply neglecting, and we're building up technical debt? And Stephen mentioned that earlier, right? That again is going to eventually slow us down if we're not taking care of that. So there are many aspects to what we should look at and what we could look at. But I think it's horses for courses, right? Which people are you talking to? If you're talking to that C-suite, you've got to have something that actually allows them to see how that value is being delivered and having an effect on their bottom line. If you're talking to the middle management team, then they're probably more focused on how their teams can be more productive, right? And looking at those metrics that help them to understand whether or not flow is actually really happening in their organization.
Well, I think that we're going to need a sort of a second conversation here, because I think we just scratched the surface and are really just getting into some good stuff. So let's let's consider coming back and getting down to another level of details. And I'm really interested in the analytics and kind of the dashboards and kind of the metrics and KPIs and how do we actually really get practical. But for the sake of time and respecting that we're all have jobs to do, as well as our listeners, let's maybe just wrap up with a quick rapid fire. Two key takeaways that you want our listeners to think about as they're waiting for our next session here. We'll see if we can pull that together. Patrick, why don't you go first?
The one topic I realized we didn't discuss is digital exhaust, and that's the idea of what information can we get by who is talking to whom. And there's a good article in HBR where you can see signatures and such like. I think there's a real role of PLM in this because there's so much organizational communication in the process of developing a product that I think you can use the PLM system, the PLM technology, to start recording and identifying based on the digital exhaust. So I encourage Aris to take a look at that.
Yeah, that's great. Marcellus.
Thanks for this great discussion. So for me, in future, we should really think about what is the value of product lifecycle management as a vision, and what should are really the topics we has to discuss to be in future. Because if we discuss now AI in PLM, I mean, AI you can use for everything as technology is there. What's the value out of this? And how can we make really a value-driven product lifecycle management to ensure the success of companies?
Yeah, I cannot believe we got through this entire conversation and really didn't even talk about AI. So I think that's another that's another conversation for a future time. Stephen.
The only constant in the universe is change. So be open, be adaptable. Because that's the only way you're going to meet the future requirements of your customers and to be able to meet that future vision, those needs, and deliver on customer value.
Good. Greg?
I think for me, alignment's really important, right? With all the best teams in the world and with all the best tools in the world, you're not going to get flow unless you've got alignment between those tools and those teams. And I think there's a real synergy here between product lifecycle management and value stream management. I kind of think of like product lifecycle management is probably the backbone that drives flow, whereas value stream management is more like the sort of the dynamic nervous system of an organization, using fast feedback and data to understand how flow can be improved and maximized. And if you get those two things aligned, I think you're off to a great start.
Great. Pavel, what are your last word?
Last word, we all want to make PLM a strategic initiative in a company. So any of the suggestions or topics around VSM makes so much sense to dive into. So thank you very much for opening up that discussion, that theme to our participants who hopefully are listening to, right?
Yeah.
So we can engage in that.
Well, I would encourage folks to continue the conversation online. I would love to hear your feedback, love to hear additional questions, and we will definitely see if we can pull this team back together in the near future to go one layer down. So thanks, everyone. Thanks to our panelists. Thanks for everyone out there for listening, and we'll be back soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.